Hello, everybody. Welcome to Magic Beyond the Books. Today we'll be talking about Professor Quirinus Quirrell. I'm Calen.
And I'm Rene. Warning, there are spoilers for all 7 books in this podcast. This is your official spoiler warning if you haven't read the books. Let's get into it.
All right. Professor Quirrell, do we want to start with his birthday or estimated birthday?
Yeah.
Was September 26th. I don't have any facts about September 26th. I just thought that was a good spot to start. He was born to a magical and a muggle parent, so that's an interesting pairing, I guess.
Okay, so he's a half-blood.
And you can probably say something about the traits of a Ravenclaw, but he was sorted into Ravenclaw in his first year. He was apparently bullied and teased for just being very timid, nervous, etc., being that sort of kid. That's pretty common amongst young kids, but nothing to be worried about, I guess. But he was bullied. He was kind of teased a lot, and apparently that fed into his desire to prove himself to some other people or just the world at large. So he was got very much interested into the dark arts, because I guess that would be the most, I guess, challenging thing to master, maybe among the subjects at Hogwarts, So.
Yeah, he seems, to me, he comes off as really bookish and, maybe your typical Ravenclaw, very interested in learning, educating himself, exploring new things. And that kind of just leads him down the wrong path.
Yeah. He was too smart for his own good or something, or it was just a pairing of he's very book smart and then having that sort of not the greatest outlook on his peers. He doesn't really make, I guess, good friends or solid friends from what we know of him in his younger years. But he was a good student. Apparently, he was a good student at Hogwarts, and then after Hogwarts, he was asked to come back and be a teacher for Muggle studies, which is, I know that they do have those classes, but I want to know how in depth they get into Muggle studies. Like, are they covering, like, I want to know, are they looking at us like we look at like monkeys or like some sort of wildlife that
almost like a less than kind of like, or like studying something that you see it as like being primitive, maybe is the right word.
Yeah.
Which, okay, so yeah, this is the part that I'm confused about. So you're educating me here. So he goes to Hogwarts. I'm assuming, let's say he goes through his 7th year. So he graduates in 17. So he's of age. Then you're saying he comes back to be a Muggle studies professor.
Yeah. So okay. Apparently he got along with Professor McGonagall. McGonagall was the one that sort of brought him back to Hogwarts. So it wasn't immediately after his time at Hogwarts. It wasn't immediately after he graduated that he came back and was the professor. But there's not a lot of context around after he graduated to when he started at Hogwarts. It was more he graduates, and then sometime after, Professor McGonagall brings him back, and he becomes the Muggle studies teacher. I think that piece of context is not in the books. It's more from, I believe there's a video game that came out that was for
Hogwarts Legacy. No,
not Hogwarts Legacy. It's a different one. It was like it was earlier. Like when I was looking at the wiki, it was like the graphics were like super bad, like not great. So it was I think it was either like PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 1 or something like that. But have you ever heard of the character Jason's sibling?
No.
Okay, so that I think is the character. So like the Jason, again, we're getting off topic, but this is how I know about the Muggle studies.
No, this is context, yeah.
Yeah, Jason's sibling, and again, I have no idea what the video game is about. I think it's just about a student at Hogwarts that, goes through the 7 years at Hogwarts, and then they accomplish a bunch of things. There's a long in the Harry Potter wiki, there's a super long thing because I think it just is like a video game walkthrough essentially.
Okay.
But there is a student who has a brother named Jason that was expelled, and then their sibling goes through it, and goes through Hogwarts, and then at some point they talk to Quirrell.
Okay.
During their time there, and he is the Muggle Studies teacher, and that was a couple years prior to Harry Potter having his first year. So that's how we know he's a Muggle Studies. That's where the context comes back in. So that's how he gets back to Hogwarts, is he becomes a Muggle Studies teacher, and McGonagall is sort of the one that is the force that sort of brings him back a little bit.
Okay, so McGonagall, this like star recruiter, because we know she recruits teachers.
She has an eye for talent.
She has an eye for talent. In the Muggle world, she definitely would have been some sort of either maybe HR or even maybe sports. She would have.
Yeah, like what if she was like a GM, like the only woman GM for like and for people who don't know, a GM, I'm referring to like a football GM, like American football GM. They're the ones that do all the player evaluations, the drafting, contract stuff like that. Like they are the ones that are the people. She definitely has an eye for talent. Maybe she would have been a casting director for like some big Hollywood studio or something like that. Like that'd be a good
sort of like an Allison Jones who casted a lot of things like The Office. So like really pop. She's been in so much stuff. That would have been McGonagall.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So, and also if you're listening and the breakdown of all the Harry Potter video games, write into us, leave comments on our Instagram. I want to know more about the video games. That's a part of the Harry Potter wizarding world that I feel like I don't know as much about, and hopefully through this podcast we can kind of maybe we'll do a special episode on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So, okay, so following this Quirrell timeline, so he's in Hogwarts, he graduates Hogwarts, possibly some time passes, he becomes the Muggle Studies professor, and then he takes a year off to travel. Is that?
Yeah. So I think it's a couple years. I'm not exactly sure. It's not really important, the specific timeline of when he takes his sabbatical, but he wants to take a quote unquote sabbatical to get more experience in the real world. And so he takes this sabbatical, and he says, quote unquote, he wants to get firsthand experience. But he keeps this part secret that he wants to go find Voldemort.
Okay, so he is specifically going to travel to find Voldemort.
Yes, he wants to find him. He wants to sort of, and this is sort of where we get into the character traits of Quirrell. Like we've said before, that he was bullied a little bit, so that sort of put a chip on his shoulder, and he wanted to prove himself to the world a lot. And this is why he wants to go find Voldemort, and he wants to find Voldemort because he has a desire to become important, to make an impact in the wizarding world. And he wants to find Voldemort and then sort of gain some intelligence, gain knowledge about the dark arts and the theory behind the dark arts, because he's very, very invested in the theory of the dark arts, not necessarily the application. He is a very gifted wizard. Like he's one of the only, and I was reading in the wiki, he's like he can produce magic without a wand.
Yeah, I want to get into that. Maybe I'll save it.
And he can fly. Apparently in the movies.
Okay, let's let's save it for the theories section of this episode, because I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to go too far down that. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm following the timeline. This is clearing a lot of questions up for me, because I was really curious about what age he is. And when Hagrid mentioned that he had taken a year off to travel, which I got confused, I guess, because later in the books, in the 7th book, they talk about way in the past, let's say in Dumbledore's time, when Dumbledore would have been graduating from school, it used to be traditional for wizards to, once they finish their time in school, so let's say you're 17, to take a year off and travel the world before they started their careers.
Okay.
So I guess I was getting confused that was the time that he was doing this right after school. But now it's making more sense to me, because I was thinking, oh man, he must be a really, really young professor. But he's actually a little bit older, because he finished school. He maybe studied a little bit after school. And then, takes his travel. They talk about he went to the Black Forest. He went to Albania, which is where he finds Voldemort. And then he returned. So he's already been a professor. That makes more sense too, because that's how Hagrid seems to already know him.
Yes.
And Hagrid does mention that he seems more nervous, and he's stuttering, and he's having a face twitch and everything after he returns from these travels. Like that's exacerbated maybe any sort of nervousness that he had in the past. But then we kind of learn later that he's doing a little bit of a put on of some of these nervous traits. He's not as nervous as he's making it out to be, because I think he's trying to really go fly under the radar and not be seen as a villain, because he's trying to hide, obviously, that he kind of has Voldemort with him.
Yeah. So I think that your interpretation is a little bit underestimating of what Voldemort's impact is on Quirrell. Because I think that as I read a little bit more about him in the wiki, I think it's more so Voldemort becomes like a traveler within him. Like he becomes a temporary Horcrux. That's the way they put it, where Voldemort is attached to him in his soul. And then after, and I guess and at some point during the whole ordeal with the Philosopher's Stone or the Sorcerer's Stone, Voldemort then becomes more apparent on his body. Like wants to, again, he has the
back of his head,
grow out of the back of his head, and he wants to be more present in what Quirrell is doing. But I do think that even though he's not necessarily a physical part of Quirrell at the moment, he has an impact on his tics, his characteristics. So like, I think that Voldemort is making Quirrell more expressive of these nervous character traits to make it seem like he is very unassuming and very weak, wouldn't be able to do something like steal the Sorcerer's Stone or break into Gringotts, or wouldn't have the agency or the ability to do these things. Even though people understand that he's a talented wizard, they would be very unassuming of him because he just has these weird tics, and you wouldn't be very suspecting of him.
Okay, so you're saying that you think that that Voldemort's influence is making him more nervous, or Voldemort's influence is making him more confident?
No, I think it's a lot. It's multiple things. So
okay.
I think Voldemort just being with him makes him more nervous, and also the fact that he was. And I'll go back to there's a quote from J.K. Rowling about Quirrell in the Pottermore, the Harry Potter. It's HarryPotter.com. I don't know if that's Pottermore.
Okay. Yeah, hold on. Let's pause for a second for people, because I think this is confusing for people, and I was confused about this, but I think I understand this. So J.K. Rowling made a website called Pottermore, and I think people hear that referenced a lot way back in the day when Harry Potter was coming out, or after they came out. And then as far as this is my understanding, so it was Pottermore originally, and then it became HarryPotter.com, and then now I think it's WizardingWorld.com. So when we're referring to Pottermore or HarryPotter.com or WizardingWorld.com, as far as I understand, that's all the same thing, but I think it's just kind of evolved and changed a little bit over time and gotten more advanced. And her original articles are still on there, but now there's more stuff. So, and then there's also fan wikis that are out there as well that I don't think are technically official, but I think they kind of compile information.
Yeah, I don't think that they are creating canon. I think they're just using the canon to compile a web page that has it's like Wikipedia
for everything. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just to clarify for everyone what these things that we're referring to.
Yeah. So back to what I was saying, he's very nervous just because Voldemort is with him. Obviously, like having a very powerful wizard consuming you and possessing you is essentially, on your mind, and you're going to be nervous from that. But Quirrell, a quote from J.K. Rowling, the Hogwarts teacher was both naive and arrogant in thinking that he would be able to control an encounter with Voldemort. So I think initially he is confident. He's like she says, he's arrogant. So he's confident that he'd be able to use his studies of theory of the dark arts and approach Voldemort, learn from him, and sort of harness his, not necessarily his power, but harness his knowledge and be able to glean something new from Voldemort, and sort of use that to then go into the wizarding world and prove himself a little bit more, show that he is a master of the dark arts, or a master of the theory of the dark arts necessarily. But I think that after he has this encounter with Voldemort, and he is then becomes taken advantage of, essentially, and is now a vessel for Voldemort, he becomes less confident in himself, making him more nervous. But I also think that Voldemort is within Quirrell, making Quirrell play up the nervousness and stuff. So it's a lot of different things going on. It's both Quirrell in his own head, and then Voldemort also playing it up in physical manifestations of nervousness. So it's a lot of different things.
Well, yeah, and Voldemort and Quirrell are having probably some sort of think tank strategy meetings, and he's going, yes, pretend to be more nervous so people don't suspect you.
Yeah, I actually don't think that they would be the think tank. I think they would be more like coaching sessions, like
coaching. Yes,
like you will do this. Word. You will be stuttering. You will say exactly 3 P's before you say putter. Stuff like that. Like it's like you need to be on it, or else I don't even know what the consequences would be of him disobeying. I mean, I guess the consequences are now you have a face on the back of your head, because when we get into the chronology a little bit more, it's the reason he has this encounter with him, and then he wants him to steal the Sorcerer's Stone, and he fails, and then he has the face on the back of his head.
This, for people, especially if you've only watched the movies and you've never watched the books, or never watched books. You know how you watch books.
I guess you watch books, you look at them, and the words go into your eyes, and then they, so you are watching the book.
Yes, for those of us that watch it like a movie in our head. Yeah. For the timeline, he goes to Albania. He then brings Voldemort with him back to England, and back to school. And this is when he brings him back to England, back to his school prep, I guess I should say. The school hasn't started yet. On July 31st, Harry meets him, and in the context of the books, I don't think he's actually wearing the turban, or at least we know that Voldemort isn't actually attached to his head at that point. He's with him in some way, but that is why when Harry meets him in the Leaky Cauldron, he can shake his hand. We're not having the problem with the touching because Voldemort isn't so closely connected. Then in that same day, he goes and he attempts to rob Gringotts, which fails, in the sense he seems to be able to get into the vault, but there's nothing there. So, and he escapes without being seen. Or I guess he must have left some trail, because they see that someone was there, but they stole nothing.
Yeah, I think that the magic that goblins are, able to manifest to protect these vaults, I'm sure has some sort of like in the Muggle world, we have ink packets that go on, or that go into like money, so that if there is, and even invisible ink that goes onto money, so that they can have some sort of tracking system on if there's a bank robbery. They have to have some sort of like residue or whatever, fingerprint thing that says, oh, the person that's not supposed to be here was here.
Yeah, Quirrell's leaving and he's covered in blue.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, also in this, I believe it's the 6th book, Dumbledore makes a point to mention that magic leaves traces. I think it was the 6th book. So, you can find things. We see Dumbledore kind of doing this in the cave, but, there must be some way to trace that someone used magic and tried to get into this vault, or even got into the vault, and, it was but it wasn't successfully stolen.
Yeah.
So next in the timeline, Quirrell then goes to Hogwarts to do his little teacher prep. Teachers know they go to school before the students, and during this teacher prep,
if you're a child listening to this, your teacher does not live at school.
Yes,
just shocking. I know that's a shocking revelation for you, but they go to and from school. They don't actually live there most of the time. Actually, I mean, that's not a good example because I think Trelawney lives there, right?
Well, some of them, I think during the school year, but they have houses during the summer. They don't live there, to your point.
Yeah. They summer in Nantucket.
Yeah, they summer in Nantucket. And if you're a child listening to this might be a little bit mature content at times. So make sure your parents know you're listening to this.
Yeah.
But so he goes back to Hogwarts to do his teacher prep, and Dumbledore enlists his help along with other teachers to protect the stone so that, now that Hagrid brings it back to the school.
Mm-hmm. And the reason that he was unsuccessful, just to be clear, the reason he was unsuccessful stealing the stone was because Hagrid on the same day, and we'll get back to we'll sort of get back to this, but I believe that Dumbledore knows that the stone is going to be stolen in some extent, and he tells Hagrid to go get it so that Quirrell can't get it. So I think, and we'll get back to this, but Dumbledore throughout this entire story, he knows everything. Like, he is the all-seeing eye, and maybe we'll get more. We'll cover the theory throughout every single episode, probably, because it is all encompassing Dumbledore's plan. But it is, he knows everything. So this is all sort of part of the plan.
Yes. Dumbledore. Yeah, he knows everything, but for the things that he knows, he lets a lot of things happen. So very interesting. But so July 31st, Hagrid and Harry take the stone out. Then Quirrell goes in, too late, shucks, it's empty.
Yeah.
And then goes back to school. And then Dumbledore, maybe to keep a closer eye on Quirrell, I'm not sure, he says, "Hey, buddy, come help me hide this stone. You be part of this elaborate obstacle course that I'm putting together."
Now, does Quirrell have a piece in the I guess steps to get to the room, the chamber? I don't want to call it the chamber because I don't want to confuse it with the Chamber of Secrets, but there is a chamber that has the stone in it.
Yes,
he's part of that.
Yes,
process?
So they're deep in the dungeons. I think it goes down to the dungeons, right? So I think it starts on the 3rd floor or something with Fluffy, and then you somehow get down. So I believe this is beneath in the dungeons or somewhere lower in Hogwarts. Quirrell does have it. It's not featured in the movie, and it's barely featured in the book, but Quirrell provides a guard troll as one of the levels. By the time Harry gets to the troll, it's passed out because Voldemort / Quirrell had knocked it out. So he didn't really have to get past it or do anything other than just walk past it. Mm-hmm. So I get why they cut that out of the movie, but it does identify that Quirrell did have a specific part. That was his room. He decided he was going to provide a troll.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then he starts to make more attempts to steal the stone to get around the rest of the measures that the other professors have put in place. Which I think this is I think this is a good plan to protect the stone. Obviously, it doesn't fully work out, mostly because Hagrid likes to get drunk. Because Quirrell, this whole book is trying to figure out what's going on. Like, what are the other? How do you get past all these other things? Because he doesn't know specifically what all of them are, right? Like, he doesn't know how to get past the dog until Hagrid tells him. He doesn't know how to get past the other measures, right?
Yeah, he doesn't have any knowledge. I think the other teachers know that the other teachers contributed.
Exactly.
But they don't know what they did. And I guess So we know it's Flitwick did the charms on the keys, and then you ride the broom to get the key.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have McGonagall provided the chess set, the live chess set.
Oh wow!
No, Ron, no, no, Ron, no.
Which that was completely Ron could have just got off the horse. Or that's in the movie. That's in the movie. I don't know exactly.
No. It is. I think it's the first two movies are quite similar to the books. So I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but I think it's something where you're in the game. So if he gets off the horse and walks, that's a move.
Okay.
So I think that's how they're getting around that. Like he would mess up the game because they would consider that like you're moving your piece.
Yeah. Okay. So it does sort of offer some sort of protection. Like it's not just a giant figure like swinging a giant sword at Ron himself. He's swinging a sword at sort of the figurine, and that sort of breaks some of the force that Ron is going to feel.
Yeah, so McGonagall provides the chess sets. We talked about Flitwick, and then I might be saying these out of order also.
Yeah, I don't think it. I'm not going to fact check you on that one.
Snape's part also gets cut out of the movie, though they talk about Snape contributing. They don't really show his part, so he provides the potions, which is a riddle, and there's a line of potions, and you drink one to go through a fire door. Then we talked about Quirrell provides the troll, and Hagrid provides Fluffy. Sorry, I didn't mention that at the beginning. And then at the end, there's the Mirror of Erised from Dumbledore.
Dumbledore.
Yes, Dumbledore. And then, sorry, I didn't mention Professor Sprout, which our herbology teacher provides the...
Devil's Snare?
Yes, the Devil's Snare.
Yeah, which was different how they got around it in the book versus the movie. I can't remember what they did in the book. Because I think that they, in the movie, they just like Lumos and it's afraid of light, right? And then it sort of like lets them go through. But in the book, I'm not exactly sure what happens.
So in the books, two big differences that I can... So in the movies, they say, oh, just relax and you'll fall through. That is not true of Devil's Snare. Kids, if you see Devil's Snare, do not relax.
Yeah.
Because later, actually, we learn of someone getting killed by Devil's Snare. So you can't relax. It doesn't like heat and light. So Hermione does one of her little fires, which she had used on Snape before, and lights the Devil's Snare on fire, and it doesn't like that, so it kind of shrivels away, and that's how they get through.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, so they get through by just lighting on fire.
Which
is pretty good.
That's one of Hermione's classic moves is lighting things on fire.
Yeah, and I think that they wouldn't have gotten there without... I feel like all of them were essential. All three of them were essential in getting through all of the things, right? It wasn't just because I feel like when it comes to things like this, like Hermione is just in her bag. She's dominating all of this stuff. Like it's like, oh, immediate, like, oh, whatever. Like this is how you do it. But I think that Harry is essential for the key.
Yes, they kind of all work together.
Ron is good at chess.
Yeah, Ron's good at chess. When they do the key, though, in the books, there's multiple brooms, and they all get on the brooms and kind of guide them. But Harry's the one that grabs it because he's
he's the seeker.
Quidditch star over here.
Yeah,
you're right. Ron is good at chess. They talk about that throughout the books, that he just has kind of a knack for that. Hermione's really smart, but in the books they show her a lot more folding under pressure. She's not as good. She's not as good when they're in these really high pressure situations. There are a couple times where she just kind of freezes up a little bit. She usually gets through it, but she's just not quite as quick as maybe, let's say, Harry when it comes to battling the dark arts.
Yeah. Which I think that not necessarily they don't like make it a point in the movies, but I just remember in the movies when they're in that like diner and they're trying to fend off those two Death Eaters that were after them in the 7th movie. I think that Harry and Ron are the ones that are more on the talented on the combat side of the actual like dueling side, so that they are able to kind of get them help do the bulk of that sort of encounter. Maybe
I should say Hermione's not when it comes to combat, she's not is quick on her feet at combat. She's incredibly intelligent and really is the one like guiding everything that's kind of going on.
Yeah.
And then Ron and Harry have their separate talents. And I think the movies kind of downplay a lot of Ron's strengths in some ways. But he definitely provides a lot. And to your point, in the 7th book, in that battle, I think Ron kind of throws his body over Hermione, and then basically Ron and Harry are doing most of the battling there. But back to Quirrell.
Yeah, back to Quirrell.
So he makes multiple attempts to steal the stone throughout the year, and both Voldemort is getting on him to get the stone, and then also Snape is getting on him to not get the stone.
Oh yeah.
And we see a scene where, Harry flies over and sees Snape talking to Quirrell in the Forbidden Forest about it. And we learn later that Dumbledore has told Snape specifically to keep an eye on Quirrell.
Yeah.
And Quirrell, I guess while he's stealing the stone, just decides maybe I'll try to kill Harry, because he tries to knock him off his broom in that Quidditch match. So I don't know. I guess Voldemort's like, hey, if you could do this on the side, that'd be great.
Yeah, I don't necessarily understand that. I think that that's just sort of a small plot device to make it more apparent that Ron, Harry, and Hermione are very suspectful of Snape. Like, they don't give Quirrell the time of day at all. No suspicion, like almost zero suspicion. They're defending him at points.
They're defending him, yeah.
Yeah, where they're like, people are maybe making fun of his nervous tics and how he speaks and how he, like, the lessons he gives, and they're defending him. And Snape just catches all the smoke from them. Him and Quirrell have very similar, have had similar school experiences where they have been sort of bullied and not treated the best as far as, their peers go. So they have a lot of similarities, which maybe kind of shows you a little bit more about, like, Snape could have gone a completely different path, and he could have gone down the path of Quirrell too, where Quirrell becomes this vehicle for Voldemort, and ultimately fails, but very well could have, and maybe not very well could have, because there are some theories that Dumbledore is all orchestrating everything.
Yeah, I think Snape kind of went down that path, but then as soon as Lily was being hunted, he stopped very abruptly, and it didn't go that far, because he was a Death Eater.
Okay,
following Voldemort, but yeah. But back to Quirrell. So we know that he attempts to kill Harry at the Quidditch match, which gets blamed on Snape by the trio. He attempts to kill Harry when he's by the Mirror of Erised and down in the dungeons with him. But Lily's protection spell against Voldemort ends up kind of inadvertently killing Quirrell, and that's the end of Quirrell.
Yeah, and again, just to be clear, that's why in the beginning Quirrell can shake Harry's hand, can sort of be more, I guess, around him without Harry's. I would think that Harry, and it's odd because whenever Voldemort is around Harry after this, his scar hurts really, really bad. Or maybe it doesn't hurt, just by the fact that he's around him, but it has some sort of impact on him, and Harry can sort of feel the presence. But he doesn't feel the presence the entire time that maybe they're having defense against the dark arts lessons, any sort of inkling that maybe it's not Snape that is trying to do this, and that he doesn't have any sort of feeling towards Quirrell as having this aura of evil about him.
Yeah, that is interesting. Why doesn't his scar hurt every time he's in defense against the dark arts class?
Yeah. I wonder if it's just like he's around Malfoy. Maybe he's like, this guy Malfoy.
I have a headache.
Evil. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Should we get into our favorite and least favorite parts of the character and our ranking?
Yeah. I don't really have a favorite part of Quirrell because he's kind of not a Not a good guy. We'll just say that right now. Not a great guy. He's like I said earlier. He's naive and arrogant, and he sort of seeks out this path that he's going down, and doesn't really think through everything that he's about to do. He's a very cunning guy, but he's not necessarily the most forward looking guy. I think he has very base level motivations of trying to prove himself. So my least favorite part of him is not necessarily has to do with his character, but I always was confused by why he made his turban smell like garlic, like so like intensely, like that's what it seems like get some sort of other, like, do they not have deodorant? Do they not have cologne? Do they not have some other form of, like, just cover it up some other way, you know? Why did you choose garlic? Use roses, use some of like, there are many other smells.
Yeah.
And I guess his explanation is the vampires, but, you know, dude, come on. Like, it's gotta be, I don't know. Yeah, there's no vampires that are going to come to waltzing around Hogwarts anytime soon, I feel like. So, you know, pick something else if you wanted to cover up the smell of Voldemort. I wonder, I don't know if do they have cologne? Do they have some sort of other,
I guess the closest thing
air freshener?
The closest thing I can think of that they mentioned about deodorizing is Harry goes to the bath and there's a bunch of soaps and scented soaps.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah, the garlic, I don't even want to talk about it because I don't want to think about how bad the smell of Voldemort is that you need to conceal it with garlic. I think garlic's just a really strong scent.
Yeah. And I'm assuming it's not like, so like I like the smell of like garlic knots, but I'm assuming it's like 100x that, you know, where it's too much, you know, like where you know exactly the guy I'm referring to, where it's like he put on too much cologne. Like I feel like the guy Mundungus Filch, I feel like
Fletcher,
Mundungus Fletcher, he would be a too much cologne guy. I feel like he gives that vibe where he's like wheeling and dealing and just puts on way too much cologne for no
he's
reason.
Always smoking. I think he's like trying to cover it up with cologne. So it's one of those where it smells really strongly of like cologne and aftershave, but you can still smell the smoke kind of guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Quirrell is a human garlic knot. He's got his little knotted turban and he stinks of garlic.
And I guess the picture that you have in the folder, like it's a pretty large turban.
Yes. So the illustrated books have a few pictures of Quirrell, and there's even one in the Man with Two Faces chapter in the regular books. Quirrell, I'll share them on our Instagram, but the pictures in the illustrated guide are pretty close, I would say, to how he looks in the movies, where it's, you know, it's a purple turban and he's, you know, just a young man, you know, sort of pale, and
he is giving garlic knot.
Yeah, you guys look at the pictures and tell. Yeah, I think he's really giving garlic.
Like even like this part, like this is like the little piece of the bread that pops out, and then the base of the garlic knot right here. Yeah, I mean that's spot on, Rene. Like he's garlic knot. So I gave my least favorite part. I don't have a favorite part about Quirrell. He's evil. He's evil, but the worst part about him is he smells like garlic. You know,
the worst.
Yeah, and that's saying a lot. You know, like. If somebody can smell you and immediately identify you have too much garlic going on, you know, evil person.
So I tried to go back. Quirrell, for me, I feel very confused by Quirrell. In some ways, it seems like he's supposed to be super educated. He, you know, reads out of books. I guess my interpretation of Quirrell is that he's extremely smart, in the sense of book smart, but naive in the sense of life. And maybe he's not the most skilled wizard as far as some of the like more practical things, but he's intelligent. I don't know. I looked back. So Dumbledore's description of Quirrell, he said he's full of hatred, greed, and ambition. Snape describes him as greedy and unworthy and a mediocre wizard.
Mm-hmm.
As far as favorite part, he knows how to stick to a ministry approved lesson plan. Umbridge mentions that later as one of his better qualities.
Yeah.
So he seems to be a very structured teacher. I guess that's a good thing. He doesn't really stand out as a villain to me as far as all the villains that we get in this series.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure. I guess we'll talk more about his wizarding ability. It seems like he just kind of continually uses the same strategies to me, because the troll thing. So he uses a troll to protect the Sorcerer's Stone, and Dumbledore knows this. And then he also uses a troll again as a distraction to try to get the stone.
He's addicted to trolls.
He's
addicted to trolling.
Exactly. He's a troller. He's the OG troller. But then he can't figure out the mirror, which Harry figures out immediately, which maybe that's more about his personality than his intelligence.
But I think also Harry has a little bit more, I shouldn't say experience, but doesn't he spend like hours and hours
in front of the mirror?
In front of the mirror,
true.
Which I guess is the point of the mirror, that is, it's like the curse of the mirror. So because now Dumbledore has given Harry the knowledge that the mirror just shows what the wizard desires the most, or the person desires the most, Harry is able to sort of manipulate those characteristics of the mirror and play it so that he can get what he wants. He understands the mechanics of the mirror. And he understands that Quirrell isn't necessarily, I guess when they're in the chamber, they aren't, both Quirrell and Voldemort don't necessarily understand the mechanics of the mirror enough to be able to manipulate it and kind of make it do what they want it to do, which Harry, because he understands the mechanics of it, can do that.
That's true. Harry does get he spends hours, and then he gets a nice breakdown from Dumbledore about how the mirror works.
Yeah.
Because...
is that part of the plan?
Is it part of the plan? I don't know. So because trolls are such a big part of Quirrell's personality, I looked into trolls. So according to Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, basically the Ministry of Magic has a classification system for all beasts, and it's a scale. So it goes from like 1 to 5. And 1 means boring, and 5 means it's a known wizard killer, impossible to train or domesticate. Examples of those would be like a basilisk or a chimera or a dragon. Like, do not approach, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So trolls are listed as a 4 on the scale. So not quite the most dangerous, but definitely need a skilled wizard to kind of manage. And they can be up to 12 feet tall. They weigh over a ton. And there's 3 types. There's mountain, forest, and river. So the one that we see is a mountain troll that Harry, Ron, and Hermione go against. I can't remember the one that's in the dungeons down there when they're looking for the stone. I think that's also a mountain troll.
That looks like a mountain troll. Yeah, from the movie, I see the like, I remember what the movie troll looks like. That's what that looks like in the wiki.
Okay. So trolls are described. Mountains are supposed to be the largest of the trolls, and they're the most vicious.
Oh.
Trolls in general are just described as being really strong, really stupid, really violent, and unpredictable. They eat raw flesh, so they'll eat humans and wild animals. And they originated in Scandinavia, and the smarter ones of trolls are typically trained to be used as guards, which we see, guarding the stone. Actually, in the 3rd book, they end up using trolls to guard the Gryffindor Tower from Sirius. So we see that a couple of times. So trolls, they definitely need some level of expertise to work with to be able to get them to do things. So Quirrell has that skill. So I guess that's some advantage to him. But I would say he just doesn't stand out to me that much.
Okay. Yeah.
Like compared to Bellatrix and Voldemort and Umbridge, you just have these like really iconic villains, and then you just kind of have Quirrell, and he just seems like this naive young guy that went down the wrong path.
Yeah. He knows a lot, but he's not really like executing on it. He's like, he knows a lot. He's not necessarily making that much of an impact, and I think that is what he's attempting to do by going to look for Voldemort. But again, because he's naive and not necessarily the best practical wizard, he becomes taken advantage of and becomes this vessel and just becomes sort of a shell of himself after.
So what would you give Quirrell on a scale of 1 to 10?
So a 1, I think a 1, it's going to be like evil good spectrum, where it's like one is evil, like super evil. 1 is Voldemort. 10 is like Harry, Hermione, maybe Sirius somewhat. But 10 is like very, very good. 1 is very, very bad.
10 is like Dobby.
Yes. 10 is Dobby. 10 is completely unselfish behavior to be kind and good and all of those things to their fellow wizard. I think Quirrell in that spectrum, I think he's a 4, mostly because he's not the bad parts of Quirrell as a person prior to being possessed by Voldemort. He's not bad. He's definitely not. He's not like super bad. He's not like a person that is yearning to destroy the world or kill massive amounts of people. But because he's then possessed by Voldemort, he becomes much, much more bad. Quirrell as a character prior to it, I think he was a 4. I think he's mostly can be summed up as a useful idiot, where he's very, very smart. And by idiot, I mean he's an idiot because he thinks that he can best one of the most powerful wizards of all time, even in a very weakened state. So even a very weakened Voldemort can take advantage of Quirrell. So that's sort of my rank. It would be a 4.
Okay, I think that's fair. I think I'm probably around there too, like a 3 or a 4. He does make multiple attempts to kill a child, so that kind of brings him up a little bit. But all of this seems to be under the guidance of Voldemort, not so much self done. So, okay, what do you think is the best moment for Quirrell?
So, again, he's not a great guy, so I don't think I have a best moment as far as like things that he does to further his own goals or things that he does to like benefit other people. I think one of the funnier moments in his character lifetime is when he faints in the middle of the dining hall, which I would think would be one of the things that Voldemort makes him do or works him up to do. Right? I don't know if is that explained anymore, or is it just he faints and then that's it?
This is where I feel like I'm not sure. We just never get really clarification on like how much is acting, how much is real, whatever. If he's used to working with trolls, you would think he wouldn't be that worried about one. So I don't know if he's putting stuff on or not. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I don't know exactly, and I probably should have looked it up because it was a moment, but I would think that he would be a little bit more, like you said, a little bit more adept at dealing with trolls, so he wouldn't be as nervous to deal with them.
Yeah. I would say my favorite moment or best moment for me that involves Quirrell is the fact that Fred and George bewitch snowballs to follow him around and hit his turban, inadvertently hitting Voldemort's Voldemort's face.
Oh yeah, that is hilarious. That is one of the yeah. Fred and George are just great characters. I feel like he's they're really good characters.
Yeah,
Good
Fred and George are
relief.
definitely some of they've got to be in my top 5 characters of the series. So what's your favorite quote from Quirrell?
Quirrell, full of hatred, greed, and ambition, sharing his soul with Voldemort, could not touch you for this reason. So he is full of ambition, which blinds him to a lot of different things. So like that is a key characteristic of him as a character, is he is so ambitious and wants to prove himself so much that he is blind to the other all the context that goes along with the decisions he's making. He's not necessarily thinking about all of the things, all the causes and effects of what's going on. He only desires more influence and power over his fellow wizards, and that is because that is his sole ambition. He is blind to anything else that could occur based on what decisions he's making. And that eventually leads to his overall downfall as a person.
Yeah. I liked the quote that Quirrell said. He said, "There is no good and evil, there is only power, and those too weak to seek it." And talked about, Voldemort teaching him that. I think that helps explain and goes kind of with what you said, explaining kind of like why his motivations and what's going on in his head. He's not seeing this as like evil versus good. He's seeing this as there's knowledge and power, and that's what he's pursuing. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to understand the other Death Eaters, let's say Bellatrix or Snape or other people, why they sought out Voldemort, why they follow Voldemort, even though he treats them so poorly, is because they want to learn from him. They want to be powerful. And that's kind of their motivation for following his sort of credo.
Yeah.
And I also have a secondary favorite quote from him. He says, "You're too nosy to live, Potter." I think that it's so true. I love the trio, but they put their nose in so much stuff that they just don't even they have no business being in.
They deputize themselves all the time. They're like, we're the only people that can figure this out. We're the only people that can handle this. Us 3 first years.
Exactly. In the Sorcerer's Stone, they do it. They do it again in the Chamber of Secrets. Like, why do they think that they're the ones that are going to figure out the Chamber of Secrets? Then in the 4th book, when kind of weird stuff's going on and everyone's getting suspicious, they're trying to figure out what Crouch is doing, why he's on the map, and they're always trying to figure out that. And then Harry's always following Malfoy around in the 6th book because he's convinced that he's doing something. It's just they're always thinking, okay, we're the ones. Me, a student, I am going to stop evil from happening here.
Yeah. And I mean, so I'll give them some credit. They aren't the most witless and useless, wizards to be doing this. They do handle themselves relatively well. Like, they get through a lot of the stuff that they put themselves in. Not necessarily by their own volition. A lot of it is luck, right? There's not necessarily anything that is completely confounds them, but they are very, I would say they're naive, but they are able to, they have enough skill, and by working together, they have enough, know-how and resourcefulness to kind of get through the things they put themselves in. So going back to your first quote, that is quite ironic that that is the thing that he says. It's like, what was the first quote again?
So, yeah, there is no good and evil. There is only power, and those too weak to seek it.
So by saying that he is too weak to seek it, like he is in essence, he has become the ironic punchline to that quote, where it's like, you seeked out power and you were too weak to then wield it, and you were too oblivious to the realistic,
to the dangers maybe of it and everything,
to the realistic ends that were going to come and happen, even though you yourself think of yourself as super super powerful as a wizard because all this knowledge.
He definitely seems to have some level of arrogance. It's very weird. It's like the nervousness with the arrogance. But he, at the end, once he's revealed himself to Harry, he seems to be a lot more like he's acting a little bit more confident. And I think that's when you're getting into like a little bit more of how he sees himself. He thinks that he is powerful enough to work with Voldemort, and Voldemort and other people are just seeing him as this, young person.
Useful idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
And the only reason that Voldemort chooses him because he comes across Voldemort, when he's on his thing, and Voldemort then figures out, or Quirrell reveals, that he's a professor at Hogwarts, and then Voldemort wants to attach himself to Quirrell. So that's one of the primary reasons that Quirrell becomes this vessel for Voldemort, is because he has an in to Hogwarts. Not necessarily that he is a very powerful and useful vessel, but he is just the first vessel that he came across that would be useful for Voldemort. That would be
advantageous to Voldemort. I mean, Quirrell and Pettigrew are just Dumb and Dumber. Yep. They're the two that just go in there thinking that Voldemort is going to give them more than he's going to take, naively, and then the two of them end up actually stumbling into being some of the most helpful to him to his return. When he's in the forest drinking the unicorn blood, so Quirrell is doing that for Voldemort?
Yeah.
Okay. Their whole connection is a little bit ambiguous to me because we know, to be clear, he's not being possessed. We see later Ginny gets possessed, for an example, and she doesn't remember what's going on. It's not that. He's fully aware of what's happening, and his body's being used as a vessel, and Voldemort's somehow with him, but not controlling him in the sense that he's not knowing. Like, he's a willing partner in this.
Yeah. He's not. He is. I think he knows he's lost. I think he either knows that he has sort of, this is his life now. Like, he's not getting out of this. So he just sort of goes along. And I also think that because his physical person is doing these things, he is getting a sense of, I guess, he's quenching that thirst of having that impact that he wants, because he knows that the game is over. He's possessed by Voldemort. He's either, it's blood in, blood out, essentially. Like, he's going to either die by Voldemort's hand and just become this completely empty shell and just become possessed by Voldemort and then be mindless, essentially. Or he could be a willing participant in this and do something that he believes is furthering his name, furthering his importance in the whole story.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, what exactly was his future plan? Like, you get the stone, you drink some unicorn blood, you get the stone. What exactly do you think is going to happen to you when Voldemort maybe regains power? Yeah, I don't know. So what are your theories about Quirrell?
I do think Snape and Dumbledore, or at least Dumbledore, knows what's going on. So, like, we can talk about Dumbledore's plan, but I think that that Harry encountering Voldemort in person like this, there's a very long theory on Reddit that I kind of went through, and I do sort of agree with this. The theory goes that Dumbledore wanted Harry and Voldemort to meet in person and have like physical touch with each other, because that would let Voldemort know that Harry cannot be touched and is guarded by this charm, right? And because Voldemort now has this knowledge, he then later in the Goblet of Fire uses Harry's blood to bring himself back to life. Now Harry is part of Voldemort, and that connects them in some sort of I don't know the mechanics of the magic, but that connects them so that later on when Dumbledore or when Voldemort kills Harry, there's still a piece of Harry that is living within Voldemort now too, because Voldemort used Harry's blood to bring himself back to life. So now Harry is part of Voldemort too. So he can't quite kill Harry completely. And I know that kind of goes against the other theory of like the Elder Wand being not completely owned by Voldemort. And so that is why Harry doesn't completely die. But there's a lot of different theories about that. So the theory that Dumbledore has orchestrated these events is so that Voldemort now knows that he can't physically touch Harry. So then he uses Harry to then bring himself back to life versus a just random other wizard that they could. Because that's something that Pettigrew points out, is that they could just use any wizard because any wizard is Voldemort's enemy.
Yeah. That's 100% why Harry can come back, is because the blood. His wand doesn't work properly because of the Elder Wand situation, but that's not why he couldn't kill Harry, though. So just to clarify, so you're saying Dumbledore from the get-go knew that if he orchestrated a situation where Voldemort learned that he couldn't touch Harry, then he would want to use his blood in some way, which would then save Harry in the end.
Yeah, because the use of the blood of Harry would mean that the charm that Lily put on Harry would essentially be nullified, because now Harry's blood is part of Voldemort, meaning that it would essentially just be like Harry touching Harry at that point, not necessarily like it would like it. I don't know. Again, I don't know the mechanics, the chemical formulas that go into this, but Voldemort suspects, and then obviously he's right in that he can now touch Harry Potter, which we see at the end of the Goblet of Fire when he comes back.
That's interesting. It's really hard to know how much Dumbledore knows. I always felt like he didn't plan that, because there's a little reaction in the end of the fourth book when he learns that Voldemort took Harry's blood, where he seems almost surprised and happy about it. So I took it as that was like a happy accident, but it could be that this was planned from the beginning, because he planned so many things way in advance. So I can believe that theory that was like a backup, but he knew. It seems like Dumbledore knew that Harry, when he went to die, needed to be fully believing that he was going to die. My question as far as Quirrell goes is, how can he clap his hands to do magic? That's in the book and it's in the movie, but we never ever see any wizard at any situation be able to do magic without a wand. And it's even pointed out specifically that wizards need wands to do magic. I mean, I guess we kind of see like some levels of magic without wands. You could say Lily's protection was done and that's magic, but she didn't cast a spell. But Quirrell's magic confuses me a lot. The whole clapping the hands and everything. I don't know if that's just a plot hole or if that's supposed to be some sort of advanced level of magic.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, you probably know better than me, but just using like examples, I feel like just living as a not like ambiguous non-person thing that Voldemort is, like he is actively doing magic without a wand, and maybe that presence of Voldemort within Quirrell gives Quirrell more ability, and maybe that's a thing that, like, if you study enough in the dark arts, that you can master some level of using magic without a wand. And I'm sure that would involve some sort of extra amount of skill, and not necessarily just learning the technique, but you need some sort of like magical super fine-tuned magical skill to be able to conjure magic without a wand.
Yeah. There's also seems to be some field of proximity, because there's a point where Harry can't reach his wand and he just says Lumos and it lights up and he's just close enough.
Yeah.
So maybe it's if his wand's in his pocket on his person, he's able to somewhat do it, like versus being across the room.
Yeah.
Maybe
like
that explains it.
You know?
Yeah. Like a Bluetooth. You got to be close enough. But also, you know, in the movies they also show him flying, and I just want to clarify, the movies show a lot of people flying, and that is not in the books. In the books, the only person to my memory that really like flies like over time is flying around is Voldemort, and they're all like totally shook by it.
Really? Because in the movies they use that, it's not necessarily apparating, but they have like their like cloudy, shadowy selves that are flying through the air, and essentially, I mean, that's how they destroy the Weasleys' home, is like they just fly through the home.
Exactly. Yeah. In the books, there's like first of all, there's no destroying of the Weasleys' home. That doesn't happen, and there's no like cloudy flying around that the Death Eaters do. There's nothing like, I think that was just kind of an effect in maybe a choice with the movies, but in the books, when for example, when the Death Eaters are chasing them in the 7th book, they're just flying around on brooms, and then Voldemort shows up and he is not flying on a broom, and everyone is just shocked and thinking like, how the heck is he flying?
Okay. Gotcha.
So yeah, so I think that's a little bit when like the movie Quirrell does a little leap.
Yeah, he does a little thing, you know.
So maybe
he does his
a little
best.
bit more of a jump, you know, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into our fan casting of Quirrell. So Quirrell's physical description, let's talk about it. In the books, they describe him as pale, as a young man, which that could be interpreted as a range. And when they talk about him having an eye twitch, a face twitch, a stutter. And then at the end, he starts to have like a cold, sharp voice and no stutter or eye twitch after he's revealed. And he wears a large purple turban and he has a nervous laugh. So I kind of took all of that. And I mostly, since there wasn't a ton to go off of as far as the physical description, I kind of went off a little bit more of an actor that I thought could play nervous, but also play evil. So my first suggestion is Tony Hale when he was a little bit younger. He's a little bit older now. You might know him from
Veep.
Yeah, Veep. He plays Gary Walsh. He plays Buster Bluth from Arrested Development, and he's done a ton of voice work. I feel like he could pull off kind of the nervous energy, but
very much so.
Yeah, exactly. I think he does anxiety in Inside Out.
Oh, really?
Or fear or something. So he just, he pulls off this nervous energy, but I think he could be evil too.
Yeah, definitely. And so I think I did a little bit of math. So we did, we saw, or from the wiki, he has a birth date of September 26, 1967, and he dies in 1992. So that would put him at 25 years old.
Okay.
And they do say in the wiki, like, it could be earlier that he was born. So not necessarily that young. So I would say late 20s, early 30s at the most. Here is my first pick, probably. This is Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. I'm thinking back to when he was also in The Social Network, where it's not sinister, but it's very calculating, like very strategic. And I think that you get the other side of that character when you watch Lex Luthor in, I think it's Batman versus Superman or something. I can't remember. But it's not the greatest like acting job in that movie. But I do think that this gives a lot more of he can play the very twitchy, very small ticks that I think that Quirrell would have. And then I think he can project very, very well the very sinister undertones of everything he does. So that would be my first pick.
Yeah, that's a good one. I agree with that 100%. And we should mention too, with our fan casting, we're not limiting ourselves to just British actors or even actors that are of the age at this actual time in real life. You know, maybe we're casting them younger, maybe we're casting them older. We're just kind of our dream casting if everything were to work out.
Yep.
So I'll do my second person. So this actor's name is Alan Tudyk. He's the main character in Resident Alien. You might know him from A Knight's Tale, and he's done a ton of voice work. I think he's also kind of played both more nervous and talkative, and then also maybe a little bit harder around the edges. So I thought he could pull it off. Obviously, when he's a little bit younger, because he's older now.
He is, in my mind, he's Steve the Pirate from Dodgeball. Have you seen Dodgeball?
Oh, there you go. Perfect. Yes. Yeah. I was trying to look up his most famous roles and find a couple things to list. Yeah, he's been in a ton of stuff. He's had a long career. So you've probably seen him in something.
I think that if you like, that was my immediate. He's in a like very fluffy shirt with a what is it? The head thing that they wear all the time, bandana. But yeah, that would be my immediate thought was he's from Dodgeball. So my next one, I'm kind of broken between two of them, but I think I'm gonna go with this guy. And all of mine are American. I didn't do any. I don't know. I feel like I don't know British actors as well. But this is my next one is Evan Peters, and he does an incredible job of balancing like calculating, but also just insane, like an insane person, insane like this one in particular is from the Netflix thing he did of what is that?
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yes, this is from Dahmer.
You know, you might know. I think he's in the Marvel universe too, right?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what characters he plays in it, but I'm thinking Dahmer. I'm thinking this is like from first season of American Horror Story. This is from another season of American Horror Story where he's very, very dark. He can play very, very dark roles.
This would be leaning more into the, Quirrell's darker side and his evil side and everything. Yeah. Though I think he could play the nervous side too.
Yeah. In this one, when he's in season 1 of American Horror Story, he is very like that nervous teenager energy where he has a lot of angst, but a lot of anger at the same time. So that would be my second.
Nice. Okay. I have one more, and this is maybe my first pick, and I think he actually might be young enough now, right, like in this moment in real life to play this role, let's say in the Max show. Mm-hmm. But this is Asa Butterfield. You might know him. He was in Sex Education, Hugo, Ender's Game.
I know him from Ender's Game. I haven't seen it, but I know his face.
Yeah, he's been in a ton of stuff. He's been acting since he was 8 years old. So I feel like he would have the kind of acting chops by the time of being, 20, like around now, 20s, 30s, to play this role, because it seems like it'd be challenging to kind of play like both sides. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and he looks kind of young and innocent. I think he's played some roles where he's a little bit more nervous-y or kind of young, not confident. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. To me, there's something about people with super, super blue eyes that just screams evil.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Taking shots here. Super blue eyes, evil. I see what you're saying.
I married someone with blue eyes. I'm not talking about everyone with blue eyes. I'm specifically talking about the really, really blue eyes that just stand out like a ton. White. Almost white, just... Yeah. That's like the first thing you see about that person.
Like piercing blue eyes. Yeah.
Piercing blue eyes.
Yeah.
Evil.
I think maybe you associate that because I think piercing blue eyes, it like gives people a little bit more of a like, they're affected by it because they're like, oh, wow, those are some very noticeable blue eyes. And that immediately allows the person to have some, without even talking to you, has some level of charisma that is just like an unspoken charisma where you, like I said, you're impacted by it just by seeing.
I think I watched Batman Begins at a young age, and Scarecrow just really scared me. And Cillian Murphy, is that how you say it?
I think it's Cillian. Or Cillian. I think it's Cillian Murphy.
Cillian Murphy just scares me. And if you're listening, Mr. Murphy, I'm so sorry. It's just your physical appearance.
We mean no offense. You're a great actor. Offense. You're terrific.
Yeah, you're a wonderful actor, Mr. Murphy, and I know you're a fan of the podcast.
Yeah.
So don't take any offense.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna do my last pick, and then I'll do a couple honorable mentions. Okay. So my last one is going to be Steve Buscemi. Where
young,
younger. I think that both of these pictures are from Reservoir Dogs, where I think that he's very calculating. He's very, not necessarily the best practically. Like, I think that sort of is his undoing, and I can't remember the exact plot of Reservoir Dogs, but he has that sort of sinister look to him. He can also play a very wacky character. I mean, like, there's another one, I think, in Joe Dirt maybe, or another character that he plays where he has like two eyes that go different ways, and he's wearing an old timey like airman's hat, and he just looks like a complete very wacky person. So that would be my third pick. There's also another role that he plays in Con Air that he is not a very good guy. I'll just leave it at that. He's a bad guy in that role.
And he definitely has the acting chops to really be the main villain in a story.
Yep. And there's a reason. I'll just say there's a reason I didn't put a photo of the role he's playing. So if you know what I'm talking about, he's a bad guy. And in that role, he's like not outwardly bad. He's like he's very like philosophic, just like talks as if he's a good guy, but he's just a terrible person.
Those are good ones. Well, I think that wraps up the episode about Professor Quirrell. Thank you so much for listening. It really means the world to us.
If you want to share this with your friends, if your family, if they're interested in Harry Potter as well, I think that we have a different take on the world of Harry Potter, where we're not covering it sequentially or chronologically. We're kind of jumping around to different things and analyzing each individual character or scenes. If you think that'll be interesting to other fans, give it a share with your people.
Yes, and join us next week as we discuss Ghost Party.